Hi. So I just modified this SSTOs in previously in my first 1.0 video, but since then 101 came out and also 102 with some slight atmosphere changes, so the original Delta V was just barely enough to work with it, and I added these fuel tanks. So actually I changed the rocket tanks to these fuel tanks and added those small tanks inside. And the ascent profile is very similar to the previous one. Just correcting for the inclination, but actually it's not important because our target now is different. So around 10,000 meters, just get this around 10 degrees ascent pass, and of course going through the hellish flames of atmosphere. We can just barely get 1400 meters per second delta V, and that is not really enough to go into orbit. And then I can activate this mode of this closed cycle mode of the Rapier engines and close the intakes to have a higher path, but it's still not enough, so I have to use a nuclear engine to push me to orbit, and I transfer this fuel from those side tanks, which were very little, but still they remain there, inaccessible for the nuclear engine, and we will need that fuel later on. So going to orbit circularization around what was it, 80 kilometers. That is kind of usual. It's a little bit higher than my usual, but because of the nuclear engine I have to have some headroom here. It's very low thrust to weight ratio, just barely around 1/3. So here's the orbit finally with 1200 meters per second remaining. And with that I not only could go around the moon as previously, but I can do a one-way trip to Duna if I wanted to, but also to Minmus. And Minmus is a bit trickier because there is no atmosphere to slow me down. With 1100 I could go to Duna and do an aero capture. But Minmus needs a way to slow down, and that of course can only be done with fuel. It's a very long, more than 5-minute burn with the nuclear engine. It's quite boring, but it's working fine. It's actually getting the whole plane hotter, but it doesn't get so hot as previously with 1.0. So with 101 this is somewhat better than it was. Still the burn, and now we are finally getting there. I lost around maybe 30 meters per second delta V on this because it was too long burn. Didn't want to do it two tries. And finally I have a encounter with Minmus, just barely getting by the moon. And here it is, just fine tuning. Well, actually I don't really need an equatorial orbit. Polar orbit is not really good for this, what I want to do now, but a slightly inclined orbit is the best. So just setting up around 15 kilometers altitude, and here on my periapsis I start my braking maneuver for orbital insertion. And this is of course easy. The hard thing is to land, because the remaining delta V will be around less than 100 meters per second, I think. It's barely visible in this thumbnail graphics, but full size there is this Kerbal Engineer HUD what I did, and that shows. But there is not really much remaining in this nuclear engine, and that's why I needed that tiny little bit of fuel also from the side tanks. I have to wait until one of the planes get into position, and that's why I need this inclined orbit, so that I have a variety to choose from. Because the remaining delta V is just maybe it would be enough to do a pinpoint landing the conventional way, but it doesn't have any headroom left. So I have to wait until one of the planes get into position. That was an idea to use that one, but I thought that the one is just coming into view from the dark side, so it's just downing there, and I thought I can land there. I have a very long path there to do conventional braking on the ground instead of doing a zero speed landing, and that has to do because there is really not enough fuel in this. So the point is here to set up this periapsis to be as close to the beginning of the plane as possible. Just other braking maneuver, and in a few seconds after passing these mountains I'm there at the plane, and the remaining few seconds of burn completely kill my nuclear engine, so no fuel left. But I have these monopropellant engines. This is actually the same technique I used for a Duna SSTO previously. It still has this, but it will not have the delta V ever to come back from here or from Duna. It's impossible in the 1.0. And then with brakes on, I can use the remaining very tiny little amount of fuel to use the RCS to help me slow down. But actually I have a very long way here to brake, and it would be successful without the RCS. It's just somewhat faster. So finally I have 14 meters per second delta V left. That's all. But this has a docking port, so it's possible to refill it. Our guys are stuck here for the time being, but they are hopeful as they see the sunrise here. And yes, so better lighting conditions. So thanks for watching. Bye.